What happens when country music royalty meets morning television controversy? Today, we're diving into one of the most explosive moments in recent talk show history, where Reba McEntire, the queen of country herself, reached her breaking point during what was supposed to be a friendly chat on Today with Jenna and friends. What started as promotion for her latest project quickly spiraled into a verbal battleground that left everyone speechless and Reba walking off set in fury. Before we get into this jaw-dropping drama, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below with your thoughts on celebrity interviews gone wrong. Trust me, you're going to want to stick around for this one, because what unfolds is absolutely unbelievable. The morning started like any other at the Today's Show studios. Reba had arrived to discuss her upcoming tour and new music. Expecting the usual softball questions and promotional chit-chat, Jenna Bush-Hager was filling in as the primary host that day, joined by her rotating panel of co-hosts for what the network had built as a light-hearted entertainment segment. The cameras were rolling, the audience was settled, and everything seemed perfectly normal as Jenna opened the interview with her trademark smile. Well, good morning everyone, and welcome back to Today with Jenna and friends. I am absolutely thrilled to have country music legend Reba McEntire here with us this morning. Jenna began, her voice carrying that practiced television enthusiasm. Reba, thank you so much for joining us. You look absolutely radiant as always. Reba shifted slightly in her chair, already sensing something in Jenna's tone that felt different from the pre-in conversation. Thank you for having me, Jenna. It's always a pleasure to be here with you all. Now, Reba, we definitely want to talk about your incredible new tour and all the exciting projects you have coming up. But first, I have to ask you about something that's been making headlines recently, Jenna continued, her expression shifting to what she probably thought was serious journalism mode. There have been some pretty significant discussions in country music about authenticity and staying true to traditional values. Some critics have suggested that certain artists, maybe even veterans like yourself, have been compromising their roots for mainstream appeal. How do you respond to that? The question hit the studio like a thunderclap. Reba's smile faltered for just a moment, her eyes narrowing as she processed what had just happened. This wasn't the interview she had agreed to. This wasn't the promotional chat her team had arranged. This was an ambush, and everyone in the studio could feel the temperature drop. I'm sorry. What exactly are you suggesting? Reba asked, her voice maintaining its professional tone, but with a steel edge that anyone familiar with her knew meant trouble. Are you implying that I've somehow betrayed country music? Jenna seemed to realize she might have stepped into dangerous territory, but rather than backing down, she doubled down. Oh no, not at all. I'm just curious about your thoughts on the evolution of country music and whether you feel pressured to change with the times. I mean, some of your recent collaborations have been pretty far from your traditional sound. The co-host sitting next to Jenna, clearly uncomfortable with the direction this was taking, tried to interject with a nervous laugh. Maybe we should talk about the tour dates. I know fans are really excited to see you perform live again. But Reba wasn't about to let this slide. She had been in the entertainment industry for decades, had faced down critics, record executives, and every kind of controversy imaginable. She wasn't about to be lectured by someone who had never set foot in a recording studio about what constituted authentic country music. Let me get this straight, Reba said, leaning forward slightly, her voice calm, but loaded with intensity. You invited me here to promote my tour and new music, and instead you're questioning my integrity as an artist. You're suggesting that I've somehow sold out. That's not what I said, Jenna protested, but her defensive tone suggested she knew exactly what she had implied. I'm just trying to have a meaningful conversation about the industry. Meaningful conversation, Reba repeated, her voice rising just enough to make everyone in the studio sit up straighter. Honey, I've been making music since before you were born. I've sold over 56 million albums worldwide. I've won every major award this industry has to offer, and I've stayed true to my roots every single day of my career. So, when you sit there and question my authenticity, you better come with receipts. The tension in the studio was palpable now. Camera operators were glancing at each other. Producers were frantically whispering into their headsets, and the co-hosts were looking like they wanted to disappear into their chairs. This was live television going completely off the rails, and there was no way to stop it. Jenna, clearly flustered but trying to maintain control, attempted damage control. Reba, I think there might be a misunderstanding here. I have nothing but respect for your career and your contributions to music. Oh, is that what that was? Reba shot back, her Oklahoma accent becoming more pronounced as her anger built. Because it sounded an awful lot like you were reading from some prepared list of gotcha questions designed to create controversy. Is this what passes for journalism these days? The co-host tried again to redirect the conversation. Ladies, maybe we can take a step back and talk about something positive. Reba, your fans would love to hear about the new songs you'll be performing. But Reba wasn't finished. Years of being professional, of biting her tongue during difficult interviews, of playing the game for the sake of promotion had reached their limit. Jenna attempted to regain control of the rapidly deteriorating situation, her media training kicking in as she tried to salvage what was left of the interview. Reba, I think we're getting off on the wrong foot here. My questions come from a place of genuine curiosity about the industry you've helped shape. Genuine curiosity. Reba's laugh was sharp and humorless. Honey, I've done thousands of interviews in my career. I know the difference between genuine curiosity and a setup. What I'm curious about is why your producers thought it was a good idea to blindside me with this nonsense when I came here in good faith to talk about my music. The co-host, sensing that Jenna was drowning, jumped in with what he probably thought was a diplomatic approach. Reba, we're all huge fans of your work here. I think what Jenna was trying to get at is just the broader conversation about how country music has evolved. Reba turned her attention to him, her expression softening slightly, but her tone remaining firm. I appreciate that, and I'm happy to discuss the evolution of country music. But there's a difference between discussing evolution and questioning someone's integrity. When you suggest that artists like me have compromised our values for mainstream appeal, you're not just talking about music anymore. You're talking about character. Jenna, realizing she needed to take back control before this got even worse, decided to push forward rather than retreat. But surely you can understand why some fans feel that country music has lost some of its edge, some of its authenticity. There are artists today who barely sound country at all. This was exactly the wrong thing to say, and everyone in the studio seemed to know it except Jenna herself. Reba's eyes narrowed to slits, and when she spoke, her voice was dangerously quiet. Are you comparing me to those artists? Because if you are, you clearly haven't done your homework. I've been fighting to preserve the heart and soul of country music, while some of these morning show hosts have been learning how to read a teleprompter. The insult landed like a physical blow. Jenna's face flushed red, and for a moment the polished television personality facade cracked completely. That's completely uncalled for. Reba, I'm a professional journalist, and I have every right to ask challenging questions. Professional journalist. Reba's voice rose again, and she gestured around the brightly lit studio with its casual furniture and morning show aesthetics. This isn't Meet the Press, sweetheart. This is a morning entertainment show, and I came here to entertain your viewers and talk about my tour. Instead, you're trying to turn this into some kind of gotcha moment for your highlight reel. The other co-host was practically squirming in her chair at this point, clearly wishing she could be anywhere else on Earth. She made one last desperate attempt to redirect. Maybe we could take a quick commercial break and regroup. But Reba was far from finished. Decades of experience in the entertainment industry had taught her to recognize when someone was trying to use her for their own agenda, and she had zero tolerance for it. No, let's keep going. Since we're having such a meaningful conversation about authenticity, let's talk about the authenticity of ambushing a guest with questions that weren't discussed beforehand. Jenna's composure was completely gone now, and her response came out defensive and shrill. I don't have to clear my questions with your publicity team. This is journalism, and journalists ask hard questions. Hard questions? Reba laughed again, but there was no humor in it whatsoever. Honey, you want to ask hard questions? Let's talk about how morning television has dumbed down American culture. Let's talk about how shows like this prioritize manufactured drama over actual content. Let's talk about how you're more interested in creating viral moments than having genuine conversations with your guests. The studio was in chaos now. Producers were frantically gesturing from behind the cameras, trying to figure out how to handle a situation that had spiraled completely out of control. The camera operators kept rolling because stopping would be an admission that something had gone terribly wrong. And in live television, the show must go on, regardless of how uncomfortable things get. Jenna, perhaps realizing that she had bitten off more than she could chew, tried to take a different approach. Look, Reba, I clearly touched a nerve here, and that wasn't my intention. Can we start over? Start over. Reba shook her head slowly, her voice filled with disgust. You don't get to attack someone's professional integrity and then ask for a do-over when they fight back. That's not how the real world works, even if it might be how things work in your little television bubble. The co-host who had been trying to play peacemaker finally found his voice again. Reba, we really do respect your career and everything you've accomplished. Maybe we can focus on the positive aspects of your current projects. But Reba was looking at him like he had just suggested they discuss the weather. Respect my career. Your co-host just spent the last 10 minutes implying that I'm a sellout and you're talking about respect. If this is how you treat guests you respect, I'd hate to see how you treat the ones you don't. Jenna, her face still flushed with embarrassment and anger, made one final attempt to assert her authority. Reba, I'm the host of this show and I have a responsibility to ask the questions that our viewers want answered. That was the final straw. Reba's face went completely cold, and when she spoke, every word was measured and deliberate. Your viewers want answered. Let me tell you something about viewers, little girl. I've been connecting with audiences longer than you've been alive. I know what people want, and it's not watching some television host with delusions of grandeur try to tear down someone who's actually accomplished something in this world. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the background noise from the control room seemed to stop as everyone processed what had just happened. Jenna looked like she had been slapped. The co-hosts looked mortified, and Reba looked like a woman who had finally reached her limit. You know what? Reba continued, her voice still deadly calm. I came here as a professional courtesy to promote my tours. Your show, Reba's voice was ice cold as she remained standing, towering over the seated hosts. Let me tell you something about shows, honey. A real show is what I put on for 50,000 people in an arena. A real show is connecting with an audience through genuine emotion and honest storytelling. She gestured around the studio with obvious disdain. This is just television. Jenna scrambled to her feet as well, clearly not wanting to be talked down to. Literally, you're being incredibly disrespectful right now. We invited you here to give you a platform to promote your work. A platform? Reba's laugh was bitter and sharp. I don't need your platform. I've sold more albums than most artists ever dream of. I've had my own television show, my own production company, and I've built an empire based on talent and hard work, not on reading other people's words off a teleprompter. The male co-host stood up, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. Ladies, please, we're live on television. Can we please take this down a notch? Reba turned to him with an expression that could have melted steel. We're live on television? Well, then let me give your viewers something worth watching. Let me give them a lesson in what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness and professionalism for pushover. Jenna, emboldened by what she probably thought was righteous indignation, stepped closer to Reba. You think you can come on my show and talk to me like I'm some intern? I've been doing television for years. Years. Reba's eyebrows shot up, mock surprise. Oh, well then you must be an expert. Tell me, in all those years of television, did anyone ever teach you the basic courtesy of treating your guests with respect? Or were you too busy learning how to create drama for ratings? The female co-host was practically pleading now. Reba, Jenna, please, we can work this out. We're all professionals here. Professionals? Reba rolled on her so fast it made the woman flinch. A professional doesn't ambush a guest with loaded questions. A professional doesn't try to create controversy where none exists. And a professional certainly doesn't sit there and watch while their co-host attacks someone, and then call for peace when the person fights back. Jenna's face was crimson now, and her voice was shaking with rage. You're acting like a diva. Reba, you're acting like you're too good to answer tough questions. That word, diva, seemed to unlock something primal in Reba. Her entire demeanor shifted, and when she spoke, her voice was so quiet that everyone had to strain to hear her. Diva. That's what you call a woman who refuses to be disrespected. That's what you call someone who won't let you steamroll them for your own agenda. Let me tell you what a diva really is, sweetheart. She took a step closer to Jenna, and the younger woman actually took a step back. A diva is someone who shows up prepared, who treats people with respect until they prove they don't deserve it, and who isn't afraid to call out unprofessional behavior when she sees it. A diva is someone who has earned the right to demand basic courtesy through decades of hard work and success. So if that makes me a diva, then I wear that label with pride. Jenna tried to rally, but her voice came out weak and defensive. I was just doing my job. Your job. Reba's voice rose again, and everyone in the studio could hear the fury building. Your job is to entertain and inform your viewers, not to attack your guests for cheap headlines. Your job is to create content that adds value to people's lives, not to tear down someone who's actually accomplished something. If this is how you do your job, then maybe you need to find a new line of work. The male co-host made one desperate attempt to salvage the situation. Reba, I think everyone's emotions are running high here. Maybe we should all take a breath. But Reba was beyond taking breaths. She was beyond diplomacy and damage control. She was a woman who had built her career on authenticity, and she had just been attacked by someone who wouldn't recognize authenticity if it came with a user manual. Emotions running high, she repeated, her voice dripping with sarcasm. You're damn right emotions are running high. When someone questions my integrity, my authenticity, and my commitment to my craft, you better believe emotions are going to run high. I've spent 40 years in this business, and I've never once compromised who I am for anyone or anything. Jenna, perhaps sensing that she was losing badly in this battle, tried to go on the offensive one more time. Well, maybe that's the problem. Maybe you're too set in your ways to see how the industry has changed. The words hung in the air like a challenge, and everyone in the studio seemed to realize that Jenna had just made a fatal mistake. Reba's face went completely still. When she spoke, her voice was so controlled it was terrifying. Too set in my ways? She repeated the phrase slowly, as if tasting poison. Let me tell you about being set in my ways, little girl. I'm set in the way of treating people with respect. I'm set in the way of honoring my commitments and showing up prepared. I'm set in the way of putting my heart and soul into every song I sing and every performance I give. If those are outdated concepts to you, then we have nothing more to talk about. She began moving toward the edge of the interview area. Panic spread across the faces of everyone involved in the production. This was live television, and their marquee guest was about to walk off set in the middle of an interview. There would be no covering this up, no editing it out, no damage control. Millions of viewers were watching this unfold in real time. Where are you going? Jenna called after her, desperation in her voice. We're not finished here. Reba stopped and turned back. The look she gave Jenna was one the younger woman would probably remember for the rest of her career. Oh, we're finished. All right. We were finished the moment you decided to turn what should have been a pleasant conversation into an interrogation. We were finished when you chose manufactured drama over basic human decency. The female co-host made one last plea. Reba, please don't leave like this. We can fix this. Fix this. Reba shook her head slowly. Honey, some things can't be fixed. Some bridges, once you burn them, stay burned. And some people, once they show you who they really are, you believe them. Jenna, her career flashing before her eyes as she watched one of country music's biggest stars prepare to walk out on her show, made one final, desperate plea. And with that, Reba McEntire did something that would be replayed on social media for months to come. She reached up, unclipped her microphone with deliberate precision, and let it drop to the floor with a satisfying thud that echoed through the stunned silence of the studio. The sound seemed to snap everyone back to reality. But by then, it was too late to stop what was happening. Reba, wait, the male co-host called out. But she was already moving with the purposeful stride of someone who had made up her mind completely. Her exit wasn't hurried or frantic. It was measured, dignified, and absolutely final. Every step communicated exactly what she thought of the situation she was leaving behind. Jenna stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing like she wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. The cameras kept rolling because no one knew what else to do. This was uncharted territory for everyone involved. Morning shows were supposed to be safe, predictable, and comfortable. They weren't supposed to feature country music legends walking off in disgust. Ladies and gentlemen, the female co-host stammered, trying desperately to address the television audience while chaos reigned around her. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back. But the damage was already done. Reba had reached the edge of the studio set, and she paused for just a moment to look back at the carnage she was leaving behind. The three hosts stood there looking shell-shocked. Producers were running around frantically, and the entire carefully orchestrated world of morning television had been shattered by one woman's refusal to be disrespected. You know what's really sad about all this? Reba said, her voice carrying clearly across the studio, even though she was no longer wearing a microphone. I actually used to respect this show. I used to think it represented something positive in television. But I guess I was wrong about a lot of things. Jenna finally found her voice, though it came out strangled and desperate. Reba, you're embarrassing yourself. This is going to be all over the news. Reba's laugh was genuine this time, filled with real amusement at the absurdity of the situation. Embarrassing myself. Honey, the only thing embarrassing here is watching grown adults act like children on national television. As for this being all over the news, well, at least it'll be honest coverage for once. The male co-host was still trying to salvage something from the wreckage. Reba, please just come back and sit down. We can talk this through like adults. Talk this through like adults. Reba shook her head in disbelief. I tried to have an adult conversation. I tried to be professional and courteous despite being ambushed with questions that had nothing to do with why I came here. But apparently adult conversation isn't what sells commercial time these days. She turned to face the cameras directly, speaking to the millions of viewers who were watching this train wreck unfold in real time. To anyone out there who supports my music, who has come to my concerts, who has followed my career over the years, I want you to know that I will never compromise my values or my integrity for anyone. Not for record labels, not for television networks, and certainly not for morning show hosts who think they can build their careers by tearing down others. The studio was completely silent except for the hum of equipment and the distant sound of producers having frantic conversations. Even Jenna seemed to realize that anything she said at this point would only make things worse for her. I've been in this business for 4 decades, Reba continued, still speaking directly to the camera. And I've learned that success isn't just about talent or luck. It's about character. It's about how you treat people when the cameras are rolling and when they're not. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's uncomfortable. She took one more look around the studio, taking in the faces of people who had just witnessed something they would never forget. I came here today to talk about my music, my tours, and the things that bring joy to my life and hopefully to my fans' lives. Instead, I got reminded why I preferred the honesty of a concert stage to the manufactured drama of television studios. The female co-host made one last desperate attempt to keep Reba from leaving. Please don't go. We can make this right, Reba. Expression softened slightly, but her resolve remained unchanged. Sweetheart, some things can't be made right with apologies and do-overs. Some things require accountability and change, and I don't see either of those things happening here today. She began walking toward the exit again, her head held high and her dignity intact. Every person in that studio knew they were watching something historic, something that would be talked about and analyzed for years to come. This wasn't just a celebrity having a bad day. This was a master class in standing up for yourself when you've been wronged. This has been real educational. Reba called over her shoulder as she reached the studio door. I hope your viewers got something valuable out of it because they certainly deserve better than what they witnessed here today. And then she was gone, leaving behind a studio full of stunned people and a television show in complete meltdown. The cameras kept rolling for a few more seconds, capturing the absolute bewilderment on the hosts' faces before someone finally had the presence of mind to cut to commercial. The silence that followed was deafening. 3 seasoned television professionals sat in their chairs, looking like they had just survived a natural disaster. Producers rushed onto the set, talking rapidly and trying to figure out how to handle the biggest on-air disaster in the show's history. Jenna slumped in her chair, the reality of what had just happened beginning to sink in. She had gone toe-to-toe with one of the most respected figures in country music, and she had lost spectacularly. Not just lost, but been completely destroyed on live television in front of millions of viewers. What just happened? The male co-host whispered, though everyone could hear him clearly in the stunned silence of the studio. What had happened was simple. Reba McEntire had reminded everyone watching that integrity isn't negotiable, that respect is earned, and that sometimes the most professional thing you can do is refuse to participate in unprofessional behavior. She had shown that even in the carefully controlled world of morning television, authentic human dignity could still triumph over manufactured controversy. The aftermath would be swift and merciless. Social media would explode with clips of the confrontation. With the overwhelming majority of viewers siding with Reba, the network would be forced to issue statements. Apologies would be made and careers would be forever changed by those explosive few minutes. But in that moment, as the emergency commercial break played, and the studio tried to figure out what to do next, one thing was crystal clear. Reba McEntire had walked out of that studio with her head held high and her principles intact. She had shown everyone watching